Welcome to the official podcast of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. Whether you're a seasoned dental professional, an eager student, or simply someone curious about the intricacies of cosmetic dentistry, you're in the right place. Here at the BACD, we bring together the brightest minds, groundbreaking research, and innovative practices from across the UK and beyond. In each episode, we aim to delve deep, offering insights, sharing stories, and demystifying the beautiful world of cosmetic dentistry. I'm Simon Chard, President of the BACD, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this enlightening journey. Let's dive right in. Welcome to another episode of our BACD podcast series, where we are going to be interviewing the speakers from the upcoming New Horizons conference in November 2023. So we are very grateful today to have Dr. Lincoln Harris with us. Dr. Lincoln is going to be delivering a hands-on workshop on our Thursday, on the 9th of November. And he's also going to be delivering the keynote lecture on the Friday, on the 10th of November, at the IET in London. So Lincoln, lovely to see you here. Your reputation precedes you. You've got a huge following personally and with your group of Right Global, which it's been a pleasure to see grow from, in the first place, what I saw anyway, a relatively small Facebook group that just seemed to explode and just create such incredible traction, with a real focus on quality, practicality, and just really getting down to the nuts and bolts of dentistry in a very entertaining way, I always found. So I think that's what I've really enjoyed. But tell us a bit about yourself. For those that don't know you, tell us where you're based, and a little bit about who you are as a dentist.
Simon, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at the BACD. It's actually a tremendous honour, and every time I've come to London, the weather has been absolutely perfect. And so as far as I can tell, London is a sunny city with perfect weather. Correct. So I'm hoping you keep that up for me. So I come from the small village. It's a village. We don't use the word village much in Australia, but it's more or less a village. It's under 4,000 people. It's on the coast of Queensland. It's north of Brisbane. Most people don't know where Brisbane is, so it's north of Sydney. So if you drive 1,000 miles north of Sydney, that's where I live, on the coast. And this town has actually really driven a huge part of my career, because I guess one of the things that people know me for is that I'm multidisciplinary. So I am generally a restorative dentist, but I do a tremendous amount of soft tissue and implant surgery as well as orthodontics. And having done all of those procedures combined since about 2006, it just changes the way that you view treatment plans, and the simplicity and easiness are not the same thing, of course, but the simplicity of treatment planning cases when you constantly use all three modalities, it just becomes, more or less effortless. Not necessarily effortless to do or to talk to about the patient, but to actually come up with the plan is effortless. And that's driven by the fact that I live in a very small town, and I have almost no specialists within 3.5 hours of driving. So we have an orthodontist, and orthodontists, don't take this the wrong way, orthodontists who are listening, but orthodontists are kind of like I said to someone, they're a bit like the Chinese restaurants of dentistry, because, you'll have like some small rural town in the middle of nowhere, and it will have an orthodontist and a Chinese restaurant. So but no other specialists. So we have a visiting maxillofacial surgeon, comes once a month. There's no periodontist, no endodontist, no pediatric dentist, no oral pathologist. So to some extent, either I learnt to do some of these things, or the patients drove 3 or 4 hours to have it done. And that has led to building a multidisciplinary practice. So and then from there, you might go, well, obviously I'm one of the co-founders of Right Global, which is, the world's leading and fastest growing cloud-based hands-on training business of almost any sort. And that also is driven by the fact that I have always had to engage the internet to learn, because I'm so far. It's like over a day from when I leave home until I arrive in London. So going to a weekend course in London is like 10 days of jet lag when I get home. So that's, to some extent, a tiny village is the foundation of my career.
I love that, and a very beautiful place to live as well. From the photos you were sending me the other night from the sunset on the beach. So yeah, I'm very jealous of that viewpoint. Another thing that I think we share in common is, and I think this sort of filters into that point that you just made on being isolated in your location, is the utilization of chairside milling, of CEREC, of that functionality. Can you give us a bit of an insight into how you utilize that in your multifaceted approach to sort of general restorative dentistry?
Yeah, so I was a CEREC hater for a long time. I was a CEREC. I adopted CEREC back in like 2005, and then when I started moving into multidisciplinary cases, I didn't really, I tried doing some aesthetic cases back in like 2007 and 8, and it was just so traumatic that I just kind of, when my loan was paid off,
I know how that feels.
Where you do a single central incisor, you think, how hard can it be? And then you find out. So, and of course, like the first anterior CEREC you should choose should definitely be a dark brown stump. So, you're doing a single central on a dark brown stump. It's incredibly difficult, even with the best lab in the world, and you're going to do it, and you have no ceramic skills. So that was my background. And then I went into just fully lab work. So my loan for my CEREC got paid off. It slowly turned into a paperweight, and then it went into storage somewhere, and I think it's probably still there. It was a CEREC 3D. And then I was seeing all these anterior cases done with CEREC, but like the shapes weren't quite right. Like they just, straight out of the software just gives you this kind of slightly fake shape.
Bit rounded.
I'd spent a tremendous amount of time in the lab. Yeah, and they're just blobby. Like, I don't know. I only describe them as blobby. So I'd spent 5 or 6 years training a technician to give me the sort of aesthetics I wanted. And so that meant sitting in the lab watching how technicians actually do stuff. And so you would see them press enacs, but then they would pull out all these burrs and things, and they would hand finish it. And the difference between the hand finished thing and the pressed thing was like a completely different tooth. So one day I got the CEREC, I said, come up and just let me try this thing out. We'll see if we can actually do a case. So I got a patient in. It was a trial patient. We had him booked for 2 days, and we milled all the things. But then we did what technicians do, which is get a hand wheel out and hand finish the ceramics, like putting all of the shape in, the texture, and so on. And after that, like, it turned out better than most of the cases I got from technicians. So from there, I went into basically doing all of my own ceramics. It's not probably the most efficient thing, but I find it very entertaining trying to duplicate ceramist level quality myself. And for a teaching point of view, it's really good because there is nothing that teaches you shape of teeth like trying to get ceramics to look good. Ceramics are really harsh. Composite resin, if you get it wrong, you can kind of polish it and shape it. But if your ceramic is off and then you put a glaze on it, it looks really off. So so most of my rehabs now, I do the ceramics myself, as well as the surgery and the orthodontics and the soft tissue. And not necessarily recommended for a low-stress lifestyle, but there you go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think when I lecture on CEREC, I always say you don't want to be a straight-out-of-the-mill dentist. You want to be someone who's delivering bespoke chairside ceramics. And I think when you do harness that skill set, actually being able to look at things in the mouth, modify with diamonds and wheels and the like, and then also with your staining and glazing and your characterization. I think it's a really fantastic way to be able to deliver dentistry. And I think obviously now with the advent of AI coming more and more into these platforms, I think it's going to be an even more exciting time to be able to deliver these things chairside. How about 3D printing? Have you implemented 3D printing into your workflows at all yet?
Yeah, so we use 3D printing mostly for our full arch implant cases. I don't use it for temporaries because I don't do temporaries hardly ever. And then when I do temporaries, it's for, a set of provisional crowns usually is go to last at least sort of 15 hours overnight until the next day. And so I will admit that I don't put a lot of effort into those because it's very hard to get gingivitis around your temporaries in sort of 10 hours. So, but we use 3D printing for our full arch cases with implants. And I am in the process of getting myself ready to buy a full arch mill. What I've learned from doing my own ceramics in smile cases is that patient satisfaction goes through the roof if you don't put them in provisionals. And the reason for that is that there's two reasons. Reason number one is that when you put someone in provisionals, they forget how bad their teeth were. And so when you put the final restorations in, and you can do things with provisionals that you can't do with real teeth, like join them all together and make them out of bisacryl. And bisacryl has this marvelous optical property that you cannot match with ceramics. I don't like it. It's kind of opaque, but kind of not. And patients really like bisacryl, unless it's A4, but they don't like it can be very hard once you've got bisacryl in to match it with your ceramics. And so then their satisfaction when they get the final restoration is usually like, oh yeah, it's okay. Whereas if you go straight to final restorations where it's appropriate, their satisfaction is through the roof because they remember that this morning my teeth looked terrible and now they don't. And on top of that, the mouth is much more harsh than a model. So I've learned that things can easily look terrific in the lab, and the moment you even bring them near the patient's mouth, they start looking bad. The mouth is really unforgiving. And so if things look decent in the mouth when you're trying them in, the patient will generally like it. So that whole mindset of how patients react to such a rapid change where their satisfaction is marvelously higher than it would otherwise be holds the same for full arch implant cases too. And so I have quite a few friends who either, they print their restorations either same day, or some of them even just mill a zirconia temporary. They go straight to zirconia. And then if it breaks, they have a puck there and they just hit print and do another one. So, and then later on, once things have healed and they're really satisfied, they'll put a metal bar underneath it. And of course, the cost of pucks is so minimal compared to a lab fee and you have the ability to use AI or outsource design labs all over the place so that you can turn these things around really quickly. So just from a patient, I guess you would call it PROMs, which is patient-reported outcome measures. So dentists, we tend to focus on a whole range of things that patients don't care about, but the patient themselves, the things that make them happy are often different to what makes us happy. And so patient-reported outcomes are far higher with rapid turnaround to the final restoration.
That's super interesting. I really like that. I mean, yeah, obviously from my point of view, as a CEREC user, I've seen that firsthand, but I don't think I've quite defined it in that way. It's really interesting. I guess the only counter argument to that or question that I would have associated with it would be in those bigger full arch cases. Obviously, a lot of the work done in the prototype restorations is to test drive the occlusion. So from a functional point of view, obviously building the wax up or the digital wax up or whatever in the lab with a physical or a virtual articulator, we all know that carries with it its own inaccuracies, and actually getting it in the mouth with proper function is the truest way to assess how well shaped your restorations are going to be. How do you achieve that without going through that prototyping phase, either on teeth or on implants?
I mean, if I'm doing a really complicated rehab, I'm going to make provisionals because you need them for, like I'm doing a case at the moment. A patient went to, I think, the Philippines. She had a full mouth rehab. 2 years later, the roots are going underneath her roundhouse bridge. And so I had to remove everything, put her into provisionals, bone graft everything, then place implants and soft tissue graft. And so it's one of those like 1 year, overhauls. And so for cases like that, obviously you need to do provisionals often more for the surgical and gingival aspects than for occlusal aspects. I mean, it's slightly controversial, but I've been doing rehab since 2003, and the longer I do them, the more suspicious I become about most of our occlusal theories. Like, there's so many cases that I did when I had absolutely zero idea. And when I look back at them, I see the theoretical risk, but I'm not seeing the actual outcome that's attached to that risk. And then I guess lastly, I've learned to accept the fact that actually everything wears out. You know, you can't escape this. So like, dentists tend to beat themselves. I mean, obviously if it's wearing out in 2 years, that's terrible. That's either a failure of diagnosis, or you're very unlucky, or you're just a hack. It's a technical term for sort of subpar performance. Or actually probably more commonly is that you are on the early stage of the Dunning-Kruger curve where you don't actually understand how little you know. And that's a problem that all of us have. And the people who become leaders in the profession often are that type of person, because that's what drives them. You know, this self-confidence that they have drives them to advance really quickly, but that is not always a painless process. And many of
Certainly
your
not.
Educators are, yeah.
You've got to fail your way to success, as they say.
Yeah. And then when we're old and grumpy, we go, oh, those young kids shouldn't be doing that. They're not experienced enough. Yeah, more and more people are going, well, centric relation is just an artificial position that we use for convenience. It has no known association with clinical outcomes. Like if you can show me a outcome-based paper that says that full mouth rehabs done to some particular centric relation endpoint outperform other types, I'd be very interested to see it. But I suspect that you'll struggle to find an actual outcome-based paper of that type.
Yeah. And I think that's what I like about your style, Lincoln, is that you're not afraid to challenge dogmas. We're looking forward to seeing that at the conference. So can you give the listeners any more of an insight into what the general topics are you're going to be speaking about in London in November?
So the first thing, actually, I think probably the word hands-on's probably not quite right. We'll be doing a treatment planning bootcamp on my first session. And so what is a bootcamp? So often we focus so much on the theory of something and the process of how we do something, and we think that allows us to be able to be good at doing it. So it's like saying, I've read a book about flying planes. And I've done a single hands-on on flying a plane, so therefore I'm good to go. And so in dentistry, we accept that approach. That's how we're taught at dental school. Like, most of us graduate having done a number of crowns that we can count on our hands, which you could argue is a fairly low number. But we have a lot of theoretical training, and obviously that is necessary. And there's a whole bunch of historical reasons why that's the case, which I can go into another time. But in any other industry of any significance, we know that it takes repetitions for things to become automatic and easy. And you can't do things really well until they're almost automatic. And the reason why is because things are stressful. And so when we get stressed, our mental ability drops by up to 85%. So if we can only just treatment plan a person when we're completely relaxed in a lecture theatre with no pressure at all, when we get a grumpy patient who's complaining about the money or they're really, really anxious and they're crying, our whole treatment planning abilities will just fail because it's so stressful. So our bootcamp is, we will go through multiple treatment plans very rapidly, and I will put the pressure on. So the pressure will be, you'll have a very short amount of time to treatment plan very difficult cases. And the purpose of this is to break the fear that dentists have of making decisions. So when you give a dentist a treatment plan, they will agonize about whether to do root canal therapy or an extraction for often several hours. And it makes no difference, because at the end, they'll make a decision that in 5 years' time, they'll look back on and go, I wish I'd done the other thing. So, there's no rational reason to take so long, but it's our fear and our anxiety of potentially making a wrong decision that slows us down. And speed of treatment planning often improves the quality. So often dentists are very, very good at self-sabotaging mentally. So they will come up with a correct treatment plan, and then they'll suddenly self-doubt and overthink and sabotage the result and then come up with a wrong treatment plan because of the self-doubt. And so we'll go through many treatment plans very quickly. It's a lot of fun. It's free-flowing. We'll tell some jokes as well. But the key purpose is to help people with the ability to make decisions in complex treatment plans.
Yeah, I love that practicality.
Actually, that's the first one. What's the second one?
Aesthetic foundations.
The lecture on... Yes.
Building aesthetic foundations.
So that one is... I find a lot of lectures in this topic can be quite narrow focused, and they ignore the reality of aesthetic. Aesthetic treatment plans are very, very complex because, first of all, you have a patient, and you can't just tell the patient, you should do this, and then that's that. So patients have fears, they have anxieties, and they have budgets, and they have physical limitations and health problems and all of these things. So first of all, you have to be able to deal with the patient, and then you have to have the ability to put together a range of procedures to give an outcome. And so sometimes, sure, it's just a set of veneers, which is, there's a set of veneers on a person with worn teeth is a very basic treatment plan. It's like, so straightforward. I send them to my associates in my office. So, but then you have the patients who have recession, or they have recession on one side, and then they've got, altered passive eruption on the other side, and then they're missing teeth, and then they've got crowding, and then they've got like not so much crowding that you will feel like an morally deranged person to prep those teeth and put veneers on, but not so little that you don't consider, like those edge cases in the middle between severe and easy are the ones that are very difficult to decide. So we'll be putting all of that together. So, how we deal with the patient, how we design the cases, and then a whole bunch of techniques for simple cases, but then through to multidisciplinary complex cases. So I think
love it. Sounds super interesting. You mentioned a few points there, Lincoln, which gives me insight into the way that you think about the dentist psychology. Has that come largely through your own sort of internal processing of how you've managed situations? Has it come more through the training side of things, or have you got a secret background as a psychoanalyst from a previous life?
I mean, psychology is obviously probably the single most important skill you can have as a dentist, because patient anxiety in dentistry is higher than any other field of healthcare that's procedural. How do I know this? Because I've worked with anaesthetists and emergency specialists who come and do intravenous sedations for me. And so they obviously treat, emergency specialists see people who are motor vehicle accidents, domestic violence, gunshot wounds, all sorts of, not that we have a lot of gunshot wounds in this village, but they see all of these things. And they tell me they have never seen the levels of anxiety they have in dental patients. Like it's a whole new thing for them. That it even throws off the biochemistry they're thinking about, because the amount of propofol they're using is just another level. So part of it is that. Part of it is I got my pilot's license before I was a dentist, and in pilot training they actually spend a tremendous amount of time on what they call human factors, which is how we perform under stress. So anyone can do something when they're relaxed, but as soon as you put stress on them, then their abilities decline sharply. And so that's why they, like pilots, do things like have checklists, but they also have routines that they do things exactly the same. And so that we use that thinking with our training at Ripe Global, because it's incredibly important for dentists. Dentistry is really, really stressful. And so if you don't train people to the point that they can do stuff automatically, the stress affects them. And then just, as you go through life, I've been to a psychologist, I've had friends go to it, you learn how people react to a whole range of different situations. So, it's just a combination of all those things.
Love it. I don't suppose you've read Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, have you?
No, I probably should read some self-help books at some point, but I went off them for a while because I realized that the first chapter of a self-help book is to tell you all the things that are wrong with you so that you continue to read the next 11 chapters. So, and so there was a point where I kind of went off them because I didn't need to be given a headache so they could sell me the aspirin. So Yeah.
The reason it comes to mind is that he compares the airline industry against the medical industry with regards to iatrogenic issues, and he illustrates very clearly over the last 40 years the dramatic reduction in the number of pilot-related incidents versus the number of iatrogenic medical incidents being still very, very high. He puts it down to the way that they deal with failure in the airline industry is that the failure is not allocated in general, not allocated to one individual, but it's accepted as a norm and the learnings are disseminated through the whole profession. Whereas in the medical industry, and I sort of filtered this into the dental industry as well, if there's a failure, which as we all know is inevitable in every procedure we carry out, the blame is very firmly allocated onto the practicing clinician, and therefore there's a natural force that leads that clinician to try and bury that failure, hide it, certainly don't take responsibility for it, even though we all know that it's a natural inevitability of everything that we do. So it's just it's a very interesting book, I think, for dentists to read, to reframe their relationship with failure, because as I jokingly said before, you've got to fail your way to success. I do very much believe that to be true, because you learn a lot more from the failures than you do from the successes, which is probably why being a CEREC dentist, you learn so quickly, because there's no technician to blame when your restoration doesn't fit.
It can be painful. It can be painful. And you know, you can also get unlucky with CEREC. Like, you know, there's obviously a small number of people who get any type of technology and they just happen to get a lemon and it crashes on a regular basis. And if your CEREC crashes after you've spent 45 minutes designing 6 teeth, you can feel quite close to the edge of tears and or taking up a substance abuse habit. That was a joke, GDC.
We won't be discussing substance abuse at the conference.
Yes.
To let everyone know.
Yeah, you have to give me a list of allowed and not allowed jokes.
Brilliant. Great, Lincoln. Well, I think that's probably a good time to wrap it up before we get in too much trouble. But there is a question that we've been asking all of our guests at the end of these podcast series. I might already know yours based on what you've told me already, but if you weren't a dentist, what career do you think you would, that you would now go into would be the most interesting?
Okay, so to answer this question, I need to have a little bit more information. So I'm not a dentist, but do I need money or not?
Yes, it's still very much a
the answer. So because like if I was financially independent, then I'd probably just tinker away on my farm and set up I have a 17-hectare farm, and you know my financially independent goal is to have a destination restaurant that's nationally known, has a tremendous cellar with a table for 4 down in the cellar, big wood-fired open fire for some of the cooking, and on-site accommodation with about a 10-acre organic garden that you drive through on the way to the restaurant. So that's the like money no object alternative career.
Yeah. Would you be the chef, or would you bring someone?
No. I get someone good. Get someone. You can't be a destination restaurant without a very good chef. So, but that one requires to be like significantly wealthy. So I just enjoy the dream of that one. It may or may not ever happen. Otherwise, it'll just be like if you come and visit, we'll be cooking you roast chicken just in a regular kitchen. So the other one, I did actually have a number of things cross my mind as a child, which are quite diverse. I did obviously have a predilection with flying for quite a long time. This will make you laugh. There was a very small period of time where I thought I'd be a naturopath and be complete alternative medicine type person. And then there was a period of time where I thought I might go into, corporate life or something. But I kind of moved to I actually went to a dentist just at the end of grade 12, and I found it really interesting. I was doing these fissure sealants and shining lights in my mouth and making things cure. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And so that basically was the start of my dental career. And but if you do a personality test on me, yeah, there's a thing called the Harrison aptitude test. Nothing to do with me. It's a really, really good psychology test for helping work out what career you might be good at. So I did this with a business development guy one time, and it said that I would be good at a career that revolved around healthcare, education, travel, and business. And I said, well, thanks for telling me what I'm actually already doing. So, I like to travel. I've got a dental practice. I've got a co-founder of Right Global, which is, we have shareholders, and I have board meetings and actual proper difficult stuff. Difficult compared to dentistry when you've done it for 20 years and, you're quite comfortable with it. Dentistry is not easy when you start out. And I get to travel. So I don't know. I love what I'm doing.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, that's a lovely place to end, I think. I've got loads more questions, but especially on the naturopath side of things. But I think we'll leave it there for now.
Okay, I'm not going to
tell us more about that.
Well, you can podcast me again if you like. It's not particularly difficult for me to sit and talk. So if you want to do another podcast, we can do one there. But I won't go on the naturopath. It was a very short thing. I was young. It was a young stage. Don't judge me. I can just imagine there's a whole bunch of, dentists in the UK currently going, oh, he's a quack, and no wonder he doesn't like centric relation.
He hates centric relation. He hates fluoride.
No. I don't actually hate centric relation. I just think that cases where I've used it and cases where I haven't don't look any different after 15 years.
Yeah. Well, I love the phrase strong opinions loosely held. So I think it's always good to challenge pre-existing dogmas. It's the only way that we can progress as a profession is to challenge everything and hopefully continue to gather new information to improve our outcomes. So as I say, I'm really looking forward to the talk. I've not heard you speak in person before, so I'm very much looking forward to having you on UK soil. And we look forward to seeing you in November.